tonight on Focal Point.
The arts community don't feel particularly valued. I think the smallest budget line of the Exchequer funding in Northern Ireland, for it to be cut, and for a 10% in-year cut, if it were a 10% in-year cut in any other budget area, it would be massive.
But this latest round of cuts within the arts sector is quite difficult for arts organisations to cope with.
Arts that I was exposed to changed my life. I absolutely resent it if anybody tells me, and the Minister in particular tells me, that that is somehow elitist.
You get to meet loads of new friends, new people, and it's good crack.
It's been great. Really, really warm people, lovely people.
It's bringing, in a way, the world of film and television and a little bit of comic books back into people, into people's worlds.
With 7% cuts to individual organisations and 20% overall to the arts, how will this affect you and your organisation?
We just got news last month of £11,500 going from our annual funding. With less than 6 months left of the year, that's left us in a very difficult position. We've no costs we can actually reduce without reducing programmes. So the impact of losing programme is artists lose employment and communities lose access to the arts. So we're trying to minimise it, obviously, but it's left holes in our programme, and it's also meant that we can't invest in some programmes that we were going to deliver innovative programming with communities in the new year.
Well, I think it's not just a 7% cut, I think it's a 20% cut overall this year, and for the past 7 years we've experienced either standstill funding or cuts, so I think it's devastating the sector. We can see the impacts not just in the jobs, within employment, but also the artists themselves, and actually the arts delivery within the community is going to be severely impacted as well.
The ramifications, the implications for all of us, well, we have yet to see. Next year, of course, there will be probably more cuts. And in trying to preserve the arts infrastructure, we need all the funded support that we can get. So it will have massive impact on everybody.
Well, it affects us greatly because we've already dealt significantly with last year's cut by stripping the staff back and the organisation programme back as far as we can. So we are really struggling to know where we're going to find this additional 7%. What I think we're probably going to do is completely alter the programming for the following year and the remaining 6 months, as there really is nowhere else to take the money from.
As an individual artist, I am an individual, so these cuts aren't going to affect me straight away by myself. But what this is, I'm part of the arts culture here, and I think that's going to be devastated by these cuts. I think they've been suffering for years, and now these extra cuts are just more, I think, than the arts can possibly bear.
Traditionally, the Arts Minister bats for the arts, but with this recent cut, it seems to have alienated the arts community. What's your view of that?
We were all prepared for some level of cuts at the minute. Given the economic circumstances, we know what's going on in the public purse. We know that people are pointing to Tory austerity, for example, redistributing money. It was about taking money from 32 organisations to give to others to promote an opportunity for them. And so in that way, we think it's utterly arbitrary, it's without policy, it becomes unaccountable because of that. And what we would like to see is, of course, due process, the same processes that arts organisations adhere to, where we have to justify every single penny and the decisions that we make.
It's the nature of our political culture that ministers get to act, it would seem, almost independently, but from everything I know about the party that the minister represents, they are famously across every decision. So I won't make it personal, I'll just ask what that party thinks of the arts. Is this how they view the arts as well?
Many in the arts were we were hoping for a Sinn Féin minister, if I'm honest. Let's have somebody from a party that's really in favour of the arts. And then we got a minister from Sinn Féin who has reduced the arts budget by 4 million, which is 35% in her time in office. So it's been a absolute disaster.
Well, I think the recent round of cuts is truly alarming. There were cuts across departments earlier on in the year because of general austerity across the United Kingdom. But this latest round of cuts within the arts sector is quite difficult for arts organisations to cope with. The Minister has passed on an 8% cut to the sector. The Arts Council has absorbed some of that, get it down from 8% to 7%, but that 7% cut has now had to be passed on. They've no alternative but to pass that on to 32 arts organisations. And when you bear in mind that's being imposed halfway through the year, which means that for the remainder of the year it's really a 14% cut. And what can you cut from your programme to make a saving of that particular level?
The Minister has decided to claw back £870,000, which are to make the arts more meaningful to local communities. Is this not a good thing?
Oh, I think it's important that local communities have access to the arts, absolutely. I just feel that the arts organisations that the £870,000 has been clawed back from do that work as it is. They do the community engagement and they do the work around access and dealing with poverty, dealing with difficult social issues, that perhaps the Minister should spend more time with those organisations, understanding better what their impact is outside of their exhibitions, their performance spaces, and she would see that this has actually been done and the 870 was well spent where it was.
All arts organisations, when they are making their bids for funding, already acknowledge that the addressing of inequality or deprivation, that these are priority issues. And that's already built into the programmes of arts organisations.
Well, I think it's a lot of the current arts policy is based on an absolute fallacy about the arts and how the arts work. Everybody I know who's involved in the arts is in the arts because their lives were transformed by the arts. I resent it hugely when the thing that I do, what I've practiced all my working life, the things that most of the people I know who work in the arts, what they do, all have been doing all their working lives, when it's characterised as elitist and out of touch. The arts transform, that's what they do. I wasn't born into a world where it was expected of me that I would do this. However, the arts were available to me. They were there. They're there. They were there in my libraries. They were there in the theatres. They were there in the cinemas. The arts that I was exposed to changed my life. I absolutely resent it if anybody tells me, and the Minister in particular tells me, that that is somehow elitist.
Let's talk about the larger organisations such as the MAC and the Lyric and the Grand Opera. They're obviously going to lose a lot of funding, and I wondered if you think these losses will change society in Northern Ireland in any way.
I think the losses to the arts in general, not just the big organisations but the smaller ones too, are going to change what the cultural remit is and what the cultural provision is. I think that there is so much potential for the arts and for the arts to make a big impact on schools and a big impact on people, and to also bring into the economy. There's 1.95 million comes into the economy from the arts. That will alter and that will change, and it's wider reaching than just on those three organisations.
Could you give some examples maybe of what might go or what might have gone in the past when these all organisations are receiving a cut to their funding?
Well, we're going to lose some of our frontline services. There's going to be less exhibitions, there's going to be less theatre programmes, there's going to be less plays, there's going to be less community arts activity as well. It's bound to happen in that way.
The arts and culture are important in terms of enriching our lives, and they are part of our cultural wealth, cultural capital here in Northern Ireland. If you damage organisations, you can get to the point where they become terminal, where there's no way back.
There's been some public disquiet with no transparent application process, and what's your view of that?
Well, I think we have to be very careful and transparent and accountable about what we're referring to. The 870 is the in-year cut, and by my calculation, 500,000 of that has been offered to the OFM-DFM T-Buck programme for community festivals. Now, without being told to the counter, I think that's where that 500,000 is going. The balance of that, we don't know. In terms of the other programme that was referred to about without application processes and so on, I think this throws up a really big concern about how equally or unequally the arts are treated. All of us want to be rigorous around applications. We all want to justify public spending, and indeed we have to. We're mandated to do so. It is illegal to do otherwise. And we're all very confident about that and confident in doing that. But when somebody doesn't have to do that, we feel aggrieved, But also then public funding doesn't have the proper accountable structures and processes. And I'm sure that all those organisations can account for every penny. The point being that other organisations don't get an opportunity to take part.
The recent revelations about funding allocations in the last couple of financial years, for which there has been no application form, for which there is no website, for which there is not even an email address, I think really is quite disquieting. I think that this is the manner in which the funding has been allocated should be of concern to everyone. It doesn't, not just if you work in the arts, but the way in which ministers are able to behave and to use public money like this with absolutely no transparency or accountability, I think is hugely worrying.
In times when resources are so limited, everybody who is in government has a responsibility to demonstrate how public money is spent and why and what the impact of that spending is.
It's bad practice. Things should be open and transparent with an advertisement, an opening date for applications, criteria that they're assessed against, so that people are able to apply. Now, you might introduce a programme that seeks to build up capacity in areas where there's a lack of capacity. There are things that can be done, but they should be done openly and transparently and made accessible. And I really welcome the fact Glenn Patterson made that point very strongly in his speech there to the crowd. He got it right on the button there, that's the issue for me above all else.
All decisions should be transparent, and there should be processes, and there should be a way of judging whether money is given for the right reasons and whether it's successfully given.
We need clarity of purpose, we need clarity of process. If we don't have adjudication through that, it becomes more problematic. Then we revert to something that becomes, well, it's very, very hard to start to say that there is some equitable or egalitarian outlook around this. And of course, Northern Ireland has a very unique position. We have Section 75 equality testing of everything. And Section 75 of the Northern Ireland Act ensures equality of representation, of treatment. And in that way, we deserve that before the law. We also deserve that for the purpose of all these people doing great work in communities and doing great work in the arts.
I believe there was like 27,000 responses to support the arts, but in essence there hasn't been a large outcry from MLAs about the funding cuts, and then of course the funding cut mid-year. What do you think that this says about the attitude of MLAs in general to the arts?
I think the arts community don't feel particularly valued. I think the smallest budget line of the Exchequer funding in Northern Ireland, for it to be cut, and for a 10% in-year cut, if it were a 10% in-year cut in any other budget area, it would be massive. You would see people chaos would reign in the health service, chaos would reign in education. Because we're such a small and vulnerable because of our size, somehow it's seen as easy. We have to change this narrative around why the arts are easy to cut. Because the arts are so central to the lives of everybody. Everybody in this place deserves and hears culture all around them, but deserves to be a cultural participant, deserves to get their voice heard, deserves the opportunity. It is an inalienable human right, but also if we're going to change the narrative of Northern Ireland, we have to encourage people to be expressive, to celebrate the diversity of cultures here, and to perhaps make new culture so that we become a more peaceful, a more interdependent place, the place that everybody would like to live.
The average wage for an artist is around $10,000 a year. That's a UK figure. I think it's slightly less in Northern Ireland. Yet arts organisations, I mean, they clearly persist in supporting free events, supporting Culture Night, and making a big difference so that businesses can be successful and cultural tourism in Belfast and such like. But is there not an inherent contradiction that those providing the festive fun do not share in the financial reward?
I think part of being an artist and part of being in the arts is about having a contribution in society as a whole, and the arts to actually understand about cultural tourism and the impacts of that, especially the like a Culture Night, is for everybody in Northern Ireland to really have a good time. And although the artists and the arts organisations do that on a free and voluntary basis, it's them giving something back to society.
The arts sector is notoriously underpaid. I know very few people who have pensions, for instance. So this is a very precarious workforce, and I think that the fact that we're being asked the arts organisations are being asked to bear some of these cuts makes them, to my mind, every bit as ideological as any of the Tory welfare cuts that the Minister's party objects to. With good reason objects to, let me say.
Having a vibrant arts and cultural sector is good for everyone. There's a feel-good factor about it. It's part of Northern Ireland's soft power, if you like, almost, because when the message is taken abroad of the performances that are put on or the events that are taken elsewhere, that carries the message across. Yeah, Northern Ireland is a sort of normal place and there's good things happening there. So there are lots of benefits for society, for the arts, for the general population in Northern Ireland and for our image abroad.
I mean, there's two consultations that you did. There was one on the working class communities and the arts in working class communities. Could I ask you about that first? Is there anything in that consultation that you thought was very important, something that you could share with us?
I'm loath to say anything on that because we're still in the process of putting the report together. We're getting to the end of the process. We want it out fairly soon because the Minister has set up a group to produce an arts and culture strategy. I think in the end it became an arts strategy, but that's something that she is proposing to bring forward. We don't know what's in it. We haven't had any information on that, but we want to get our report out first so that we can feed that into that discussion.
I wonder if, in terms of bringing DCAL and the CAL Committee and artists and the Arts Council together, that you would look at perhaps something a bit more innovative rather than a consultation, say a working party group or something like this?
Consultations have a habit of being rather formal. It opens for 8 weeks, it closes on a certain date, you have to fill in a particular form and do it in a certain way. I think something a bit more flexible or imaginative would be good in that regard.
I understand that the community arts strategy, which the Arts Council presented 18 months ago, there's been no decisions on that, and I wondered if there was anything you might share about that.
It's a busy committee. We've had a lot of business over the past year that I've been in the chair, and our focus at the moment very much is on this particular issue about the latest round of cuts, and then also to pose the questions about where did all this money go.
What message would you like to get across today?
A very simple message, which is that these cuts are not inevitable. These cuts, the depth of these cuts is ideological, and that there is choice in this matter. And the Minister is making an example, I think, of the arts in general in Northern Ireland, the Arts Council in particular, and making a political point and using people's livelihoods to make that point.
Personally, I would like the Minister to look out the window and recognise there is a lot of really unhappy but very vibrant people outside who want the arts greater invested in. As a group, as a sector, I would like this to be the start of a campaign that allows us to build a better campaign and strategy towards making awareness of what we do and the impact we have, and also turning around our own finances and our own ability to be resourceful by joining together today.
Today is not party political. Today is not focused on one person. Today is about 500 and more people turning up here to say that the arts matter. They matter to them personally as professionals, they matter to their communities, they matter to their families, they matter to their society. And that we have to urge our politicians to hear that voice and recognise that the arts do matter.
Walking to the lift and bumping into Alice Creek and suddenly thinking, oh my god, you were the woman that was in Ghost Story that scared the bejesus out of me. It's actually fantastic.
So far we haven't been able to experience much of it. As soon as we got in today, we've just been swamped. I think we moved about 5 feet. Yeah. So we got from the door into the desk, that was it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll actually enjoy it once we get into the arena. I really want to meet Apollo Creed. I really want to meet Carl Weathers.
Well, the highlight is just being here, and experiencing it. Really, really warm people. It can be intense sometimes because the hours are pretty relentless when you have, people who are constantly coming up. Most people actually ask the same questions that I've heard for my entire career. But still, when people are warm and friendly, then it's a great experience.
Everyone's been really beautiful and sweet, and I love all the other guests that are here too. It's been a really good time so far. And now with social media, you can have conversations on Facebook or Twitter, and then they can meet you in person at a convention if it works out that way, and that's a really fun experience too.
When people who don't come to conventions find out that you're going to one, the first question they always ask is, do you have to dress up?
All the guys from Predator, all the guys were here yesterday. They were great. I mean, it was very unique. It looked like the real deal from the movie. Very impressive. The Batman guy yesterday was good, with Superman walking around, and it was a lot of fun.
The red Dalek was amazing.
It is a full-size Dalek from the sci-fi show Doctor Who. I've been completely full-size. I hop inside him and I'm sitting inside of a little seat. And I wired up to a voice modulator over the headset on. Obviously I can do the voice and everything. Well, the original shell was done by a friend. It took about 5 or 6 months, and it was done on the cheap. But then whenever I spent about 6, 7, 8 months doing it up, basically adding all new stuff and basically all electronics and things like that, and a new paint job.
Cosplay this year again has been ramped up. Everybody's really making a massive effort. Everything from Batmans to Pinhead to Michael Myers to other Iron Men. The cosplay's been fantastic this year.
Just every time I went to a con, it just gave me an excuse to dress up. So it was another excuse to have a Halloween that was, more than one day out of the year.
Yeah, every time we go to a convention, every time we go out or go to one of these big events, we want to build up from there. We're not so happy with our costumes, so we're now building up and building up. And now we're here at this standard we are now.
The majority of real cosplayers would, make their own stuff as well. But then it's all about just finding the right pieces and putting them together. But don't rush it, because then, if you're rushing it, you won't be happy with the end result. Like what I did and what we mostly do is take our time. And the end result is very nice.
Finding all this stuff online, finding it locally is very difficult, so we have to go overseas. We're talking Italy, America, Japan, China, different places like that where they'll actually deliver. This helmet is from Italy. The shield is I made myself, actually. The rest of the uniform all had to be specially tailor-made, so it would actually have the look and carry the look of Captain America with me.
Say about 3 years ago, I came to Comic-Con and I was like, I am not wearing a costume, I'm going to be a prop. I'm going to go do Comic-Con. When I arrived, I saw everybody else in the costume, and I was like, I'm a prop, I'm going to my jeans. From now on, I'm going to do cosplay, and I've slowly built different cosplays throughout the year.
I've done Batman, I've done Wolverine, I've done Tom Baker, I've done Joker, I've done a few bits and pieces over the years, some bigger than others.
Sales have been good, and for small press, the sales are what matters at a convention, and you get to meet interesting people.
The organisers, they know that it's worth bringing people over, and it's worth trying to set up this kind of event. There's definitely enough people that seem to enjoy it, and I mean, it's got so much bigger this year than what it was last year, so if it keeps following that trend, I mean, we're going to have a really nice event over the next couple of years. Sitting in the green room and chatting to Vasquez and Drake out of Aliens, absolutely bloody brilliant. I mean, it's that weird thing where you're just as much a fan as anybody else, and these things that were favourite films that you watched over and over again, and then you're actually sitting talking to the people. It's fantastic.
Everyone always has a good attitude. Doesn't matter who they are, what age they are. When they come to something like this, even if they haven't known what to expect, the smiles start to come over the face. They forget about the crowds and the long stands. It's like having family that you actually like from the first day. It is just glorious. It's like, you're going to go and visit your uncle. Oh, do we have to go today? It's like, we're going to go and visit your uncle. Yes, I'm already in the car. Let's go.
Even if you have a cheap costume, £20 or £30, give it a go. Get up to a con, because this is where you get to meet loads of new friends, new people. It's good crack.
And now, tomorrow's weather.